If not, I'm going to ask members of council where would you like to start. I know that we kind of left it at half-acre lots and those kinds of things, and I think we had messed with the map about 17 times. So that's where we were, and I will open the floor to council. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, before we get started on the maps, that's actually something that I really want to talk about. We were all on this map here, and I'm having a lot of heartburn about it because we spent a lot of time on public input, going out to Dr. Lee's place and all the town hall functions, and I kind of feel like we're leaving out the public input in the map. To me, this is a map that says, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like one day, and it reminds me of when I was a kid thinking that, oh man, Greenville's going to come all the way down 123 and run right into Easley. And that's where all the growth's going to be. And it's almost like that's what we're trying to force to happen. And to me, I would like to make a motion that we go back to the 5 here, because to me, this is more indicative of what public input had in conjunction with what we've been discussing all along. So that still gives us the opportunities to talk about the half-acre, but now we're, for me, in the Liberty District, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but when I'm looking at this map right here, this is what I was talking about when I said I think there's places where I need to color in a different change, and this has already done it. We've already taken this map takes into account more what public input was, while still staying within the guidelines we've been talking about within those individual zones, for lack of a better word.
So
my motion is to move back to the 5.
So I have a motion on the table to move back to the 5 zone map. Do I have a second?
I will second that for discussion.
So second by Councilman Wallace. Discussion on moving back to the 5 zone map. Let's see. Councilman Wallace.
I don't like what Councilman Costner talking about, the map that we spent so much time on with regard to L 123. My only concern is, and I've been clear from the beginning of this, I'm not for increasing density, period. I still am concerned about the gateway corridor areas around the towns, but I think we can discuss more.
Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Sato.
is this the map number 4, or not number 3?
No.
It's something different, right?
This is the map that you saw at Committee of the Whole in October. The very first 5-area map that came out of GIS. It was just orange color at the time.
It was this one here?
Yes.
Yeah, if you remember, that's the one that had the salmon colors, and we talked about it a great deal, but you all, and we agreed that it was a good idea to get to something other than that.
One of the things that I thought was an improvement was that actually had a Highway 11 zone where you went from a mile below Highway 11 up to North Carolina. That was an improvement. That would actually go away on this map. Right, unless there's 6 zones.
I mean, we see that it's up to council to decide where those boundaries fall in whatever zones you decide on.
Councilman Zeta, I don't know that I agree with you on that.
Okay.
I think that it expands that area more. You have to equate it by the colors, but in the 3 map, right, because these are parks, that light blue area is up here, and then you've got one big massive swath of this, I don't know, I gotta speak in terms of what it is, rural community area. So the names changed too.
So I could be reading it wrong. So
what I'm saying is, to me, if I'm reading it right, the area expands. Right now, it's just up there on Highway 11, and now it's going to expand all the way down.
That's the Appalachian Heritage Area.
Yeah, so the language provided mentions a mile south of 11, but those 5 area descriptions were written for any 5 areas. So we would look to y'all to set where those boundaries go.
Okay, so I'm wrong.
No, I don't think so.
They're just saying two different things. What they're saying here is they have it written as a mile below Highway 11, but when you actually look at the map, and that's on this map
It
here,
extends.
but when you look at that, that actually goes away.
Yeah, because it goes all the way down, all the way, I
It was
mean,
all the way to 183.
183.
But there's
Just a
no
larger area.
densities associated with it.
well, I mean, but that's what I think it gives us an opportunity, if, I mean, we're talking about 40% open space, 2 acres, whatever that becomes. If we can decide on the highest density is the black and the least density is the Appalachian Heritage Area minus the Highway 11, whatever, and the protected land, then we come up with the terms within those zones. And the reason that I'm interested in it, this versus this, is because it puts, there's some areas in the Liberty area that I think need better definition, other than the haves and the have-nots, or the dense and the dense lots.
Makes sense.
So that's why I'm.
What makes that complicated though is that
We have to divide it.
what you could have done under this plan here, let me see if I can find this map.
This one.
Your map, yeah, that map here. What you're able to do there is you're able to go into the Highway 11 ordinance and take out that definition of what the area was and replace it with that. That made it a lot simpler. Now, if you go with this, you're likely going to have to keep that the way it was.
But
It would just be
Right, the
it would
Highway
be
11
too
ordinance
broad.
still stands.
it extends some of those protections further down. So
Right, it wouldn't be an override of what's
that's
there.
your,
No, but I mean, like, you see what I'm saying is, the way, whatever that graph was, the one that he just held up, this one here, you could replace the definition of what the heritage area is in Highway 11 ordinance very easily. They're
Right.
almost overlapped. They're redundant, actually. But when you do this, they're no longer redundant. You'll probably have to keep it. That's what I liked about it. Simplified it. Just made it very simple. I didn't like this part down here. You and I agree. But it simplified the Highway 11 ordinance. That's what caught my eye.
To me, this map offers more restrictions across the county and is indicative of what the people were saying that they wanted us to do.
It may, but it's gonna be more complicated because you're gonna have two areas up there.
Well, that's
That's
why
my only point.
I'm not afraid of the complication. What I'm afraid of is put a definitive line and go, this big swath, y'all are all gonna be the same, this big old area. And y'all are all gonna be the same in this little area down here. And I don't think that's what the people of Pickens County are saying. That's at least not in my district.
Mr. Chairman,
As well.
I just want to clarify, I believe that last week, I thought we voted to move forward on the map with 3, and then y'all added a new zone called the overdevelopment zone, which applied to the southeastern corridor and one other place, so I thought we were actually working with a 4-zone map, and that's what I expected to see tonight, so I don't understand if we voted we voted in the 3-zone map with the addition of a new one that y'all wanted to put in the southeast corner. And then I've never seen that, and now we're back to the one from October.
So, Mr. Chair. So the reason I'm making that motion is because of that, because I don't have a 4-zone. And when I was looking at this one, the heartache was because we've got areas where they were saying that need to be dense or allowed density that don't have infrastructure. We probably should color those in. That's why I was asking for a way to color it in. And then I got to looking at this map, I'm like, well, holy crap, it's already colored in exactly what we had talked about initially. We should be working off of this one so that we don't have to waste our time figuring out, okay, this area here needs to be this color, and I only have 2 choices. I either have this one or this one.
I mean, right now, the whole county's one thing, so 3 is still, like, I see what you're saying, my frustration with the 3 zones, or the 5, is how little of it is the darkest blue.
You know, the black area, kind of, it looks black on
Gateway corridor.
mine. The gateway corridor.
Like when you look around Clemson, where the highest density in the county is, in Clemson and Central, and Easley, there is such a absolutely tiny amount that got colored that I don't think we were giving ourselves the chance to put housing anywhere. But when we start discussing each color by color, we are adjusting the map. So I guess my question is, instead of going back to an old one, why don't we start with the 3 and then color in like we did last week? Tell staff exactly where you want to change to this new one, and then we're working off of this map, which I actually prefer because it reflects development sticking to 123.
Okay, so I'm debating you. Please take it in the spirit that I mean it. When it comes to Clemson, and there's maybe there are other areas that you need to say, I would rather you say, this is Clemson, this is what they want. They want this black, the darkest gateway corridor. They want this here, 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 and here. Because I'm saying I like the delineation between an agricultural heritage and a natural heritage, and then the community center areas. Matter of fact, we had was it today? No, yesterday. When did I meet with Liberty?
Yesterday.
Met with Liberty yesterday, and they were talking about where they perceive the areas of growth around 123, and would probably consider it a little bit darker down the bottom portion here. To me, this is an easier map for us to adjust and still stay within the boundaries of what the public input is. So that's why, and like I said, once we start, we started down this path of saying, okay, how do you define the gateway corridor area? It's going to have this many acres. It's going to have this 20%. So we were starting down that road, and it is more complicated. Rather than go 1, 2, done, we can go, all right, here's the first one, here's the second one. Maybe it's going to be 30%. Maybe the natural is going to be 40%. Maybe the agricultural is going to be 50%. You see what I'm saying?
I guess, can I just ask?
That gives us more definition to maintain the culture, the heritage, but also plan for the growth.
Process question. If something was voted on last week, and then we haven't gone, or it was voted to put onto the public, can we go back this week and do a complete change, like override that vote? Okay.
Absolutely. That's the reason for actually meeting again tonight. I guess one way to think of it is a continuation of the last meeting. So anything that is changed from last week's discussion, it would be like it was a motion that was had at last week's discussion to change it all up.
That complicates it more because at last week we voted for a 3-zone map that voted in with the addition of a 4th. And now you're saying it's the same discussion where we're saying we're not voting for that.
So this would be a new motion to not do the 3-zone map with the addition of the 4th, but go to the original 5-zone map that was presented to us with the ability then to, if we want to make tweaks and changes to the 5-zone. That's the actual motion on the table.
Okay.
Yeah. Other discussion.
One thing I do like about this matrix here is it is uniform. It's pretty uniform. You can tell how you change as you go over time. They were introducing master plans with county council approval and school board approval, all those other things. And it really just added a lot of complication there. So I mean, I agree. I guess the problem I have is that I generally come in.
Which one were you talking about? When you said this one here,
the five zones that we had, go back to October 16th, we had 5 zones, and we had this matrix. This is where we're going back to. Now, I can just go look back at my notes for that meeting and be prepared for tonight. But the problem I have is I generally prepare for these meetings, and when I'm ready for this map, I talked to Ken during the week about his thinking on the master plans, and honestly, I was going to support that. Right. But now it's getting yanked out, and we're going back to what we had before. So it's kind of hard to. But like I said, I see the merit in what you're saying. The map is more complicated, but the density table is less complicated. So I see that. But my point is, I was prepared to work on what they presented last time as a staff plan, and I was going to probably support that because I understood their logic. But now that's going to kind of go away. You're not going to build master plan developments all the way down to Pickens. You're just not.
No, but I mean, who's to say that you can't figure out a way to put a master plan back?
Change it in a 6 zone,
or within the Highway 11 corridor or whatever you want.
Or you could go to this Matrix here, which I thought had some merit at the time, but it got dropped pretty quickly. So I just kind of moved on and didn't listen to what he had to say and listen to his logic and said, that wouldn't be my plan, but I probably could support it.
That's true.
Now go ahead.
Finish.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, my point is, once we define the areas, then we can make tweaks however we want to, and if master plan wants to be able, if we want master plan part of that, I'm cool with it. If you want to say, I want, the Appalachian Heritage area to be
Like
2 acre lots and 50% open
This would
zone.
make sense.
And that gives us a point of being able to debate about that. This doesn't give all the way, I mean, you've got these 3 little, whatever, I don't know what those are up there. I don't know enough about the upper part of Pickens to speak intelligently about the development part, but even those are still considered agricultural heritage, right?
Yeah, it's just, I'm just
And
trying to get my.
that could be, we still, however we want to define it. I just think this gives us more flexibility in our definitions. It enables us to follow what the public input has been way more aligned than what this is. This to me is when I was 10 years old and thought, hey, this is what it's going to look like one day from Greenville to Easley. And it doesn't, but I don't know why it does or does not. It just, this to me looks like it's either going to be dense or it's either going to be not in this big old monster areas, and it's going to really, really concentrate it in around these other areas. And I'm wanting more flexibility with this.
Other discussion?
So I went back for all my notes for all the meetings I've gone to. And then I pulled out some dusty books from when I was in the planning commission. And then I started looking at the coursework that I had taken on development, et cetera, when I was in planning commission, and stuff that we did on the school board, and even the research I did for sustainability and sustaining communities and whatnot. And I started reflecting on what people are asking us to do, and they're asking us to prevent sprawl and overdevelopment, right? And our level of focus has to be at a governance level. And so we went to the planning staff and said, hey, these are the directions we want. We talked to whole lots of folks, right? A lot of folks, aren't going to necessarily have the benefit of coming to the meetings and talking with the planning staff and all the other stuff. But I would say that the planning staff, they devoted a certain portion of their life to developing technical expertise, like if I ask you about some air conditioning stuff, you probably give me a fairly educated answer. If you ask me about giving long-winded speeches, I would tell you all kinds of great stuff. But at the end of the day, when like I've hired lawyers before, and I hired one time, and he says, you pay me to listen to me, but if you don't listen to me, you're going to pay one way or the other. And so we got the planning staff, and the planning staff from the very beginning has been fairly explicit, and my takeaway has been 3 parts. If you want to prevent sprawl, which is the high-level goal, and overdevelopment, which is the high-level goal, then you've got to maximize the utility of the infrastructure that you have. And then you've got to plan. And so last week we were here and you said your focus is on people living here now. Well, that's not planning. That's the reason why we feel so far behind on the roads, right? And the language we've used on the people that made the sort of only people today count and the people that are yelling the loudest count, we've called those people politically coward, right? I mean, their foresight was so short that they left us in a hole where we had to open ourselves to this political nonsense about the largest tax increase in history when folks have been paying it all along to take care of this capital asset that's so important to the community. And that's a critical place we got to. So it took a good combination of folks with the political willpower to fix that problem. So now what we're talking about is planning. Planning is not reacting. Planning is looking into the future and where we want to direct growth. Because 10 to 20% growth over the future may not happen, but if you have a plan, you've got a direction, and you can't beat a plan with no plan, which is the reaction approach. Okay, so I used to work for this guy, and his motto. So work in a large corporation because you get asked to do all kinds of stuff, and I would go to him and start complaining, the technical details associated with what they're asking for, and he would always say to me, "They're asking us to do something, they're not asking us to do something stupid." All right. And so then you've got to be the professional planning person or the professional engineer or the air conditioner guy or the ponytail guy And you got to go back and say, hey, this is the stuff that's stupid. And you guys have told us what is stupid. You told us. You know, this map is what you guys put together when you thought you were going to have a chance in your career to do planning, right? But it's a balance between what you thought we'd said to you over time, right? And a balance between all the folks that you've met with and listened to or whatnot, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of rhetoric in the world that all the government people are just evil and you should never trust them, you should always hate them, right? You know, but not all of us have that kind of worldview. So you did your best to tell us, like, hey, you know, if you want to maximize the value of existing infrastructure, you want to maximize the value of the existing roads and all those other things, this is the combination stuff we came up with, which to me, I mean, honestly, when I saw that you changed it, I didn't know what was going on or what the forethought was, but then I had a chance to really kind of look at it, and you guys explained it, and I was like, oh yeah, there was the 17 different discussions where they told us that if we build down 123, you preserve the character of the community, which we've debated now for almost 3 years. All the way through the Highway 11 thing, we talked about the character of the community. All the way through this, we're talking about protecting the character of our community because we know that we're going to grow. We're very attractive to the rest of the world because we made some good decisions every time, right? So my understanding from the people in my area is not, hey, I only want half acre. They said fight sprawl. The problem with, you know, maximizing this and not doing this and whatnot is we're going to push on the balloon and it's going to swell on this side. And so I went and talked to a bunch of folks that build houses, fake houses, developers, as it were. And they were like, yeah, we'll just buy 1 acre. We'll put a house on it. So, you know, nobody's going to want to build neighborhoods, you're right. Nobody's going to build 100 acres and build 60 houses. They're going to buy 100 acres and build 100 houses. So you're going to get way more houses. What you're not going to get is clustered or concentrated around where the utilities are or anything like that. You're going to put into the place where they can get the land and they can make the most profit, which is the thing that the people told us to be wary of. They said, as you're planning, beware of this profit-based, right? It's not going to lead to the most efficient use of facilities and utilities and access to work and things. And you know, you keep talking about buses and stuff. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. But what is going to happen is automated vehicles. And the access to autonomous vehicles means at a certain point, all the transportation issues get worked out. You just pay to play. You don't have to pay for insurance to cover you 24 hours a day for the whole year, that kind of thing. There'll be an answer to it. It's just not going to be buses, particularly in an area. So if we aggregate where the people are kind of at now, where the resources are at now, where the transportation is at now, where we focus at least, because they can still build other places. We're not talking about changing anything for single family. People can still buy land and do houses, what he said last week, right? So what we're talking about is development and channeling development and doing the things that the people that talk planning every day, not just when we come together to have a political meeting to mug for the camera and whatnot. You talk about it every day, right? You go to meetings where you take training and you talk to experts and talk to people that have been in other areas who've done this and solved these problems before. Well, people that screwed it up, people that in their career they had the opportunity and they looked over it, so now they're paying the price for it, right? People that had to flee Raleigh, right? So nothing more frustrating when somebody says, please do something, not meaning to do something stupid, and then experts come back and give you their paid for advice and you're hired to do this, right? And then you completely don't listen to a word they say and they show it to you. Boy, I mean, I liked this. I liked it mostly because in my area it makes things real easy. It doesn't make it real easy in the rest of the district. It's a little more cumbersome for us to kind of figure out where people should go to develop. There's no planning in this. This is a reaction. This is whatever the people today are asking for. The problem is the people that are going to come. And you can't build a wall. We can't prevent people from coming. We're very attractive as a place to come to. And the realty guy that was here last week, he said, if I were going to have to pay $650,000 to $850,000 for a home, I would just go buy 5 acres of land and build a big old house and have a nice big yard. Something that would be easy to flip later on. Why would I put that in a subdivision and have to do with HOA stuff and white-haired old guys that don't have anything better to do than raise cane about you driving around the neighborhood too fast? So this is going to push sprawl. I mean, this at least gives them a plan. This at least gives a direction. This gives the public services guys an idea of where to put, poop pipes. It gives people some stuff. You guys have the ability, individually, as I asked for last time. I told you I would go with what you went with because it doesn't really affect my area on the same scale that it affects y'all, right? So I told you. So I did, and I will continue to do that because this particular piece of what we're talking about is so minor compared to everything else that we're doing. I'll defer to y'all. But at the end of the day, you have the chance, Roy, to go and to carve in whatever you want in the overdevelopment risk area. And you have the chance to say, we're only gonna change that if it's this, this, and this. You have the chance to plan. And you can do it very specifically for your area. So you can placate your voter base by putting the overdevelopment risk area in there and solve the problem for them. So they never have to worry about sprawl in their area if X, Y, and Z is not done. You have the same. And as long as you butt up against your area, she's mostly, what, you got 10 people in the county?
Maybe.
12, right? You know everyone by name? In your case, they're just going to annex your properties. They have a different political ideology in Clemson at this point. They're just going to take your land. It's going to take 10 years for the state to fix any kind of annexation issues. So you're just going to have to live with whatever they give you if you don't give them a direction to go in. That's planning. So ask us to do something. If you guys want to do something stupid in your areas, I'm going to support you on it, right? Because I want to move on to all the other things tonight, the whole rest of the book. But they asked us to do prevent sprawl, and this is not going to help that at all. It's going to increase sprawl. It's going to increase the price of homes. So the people asked us to do something at the governance level with an executive vision for where we're going to develop. These guys came and told us the problems. I filed that away because we've had some folks, give us a hard time, and we're afraid that somebody's going to convince me that it was because they can skew what we actually do a lot of different ways. The elections are coming, man, but what'd you say, Chris? We're going to have to run the county like we've already lost the election, so we keep making the kind of good decisions we made for the last 2.5 years, which was political will, right? If we were taking the same approach to the roads, we'd still have a 7-year repave cycle. So I'm with you. I'm with you. So let's not do something stupid.
So first of all, I'm not placating to anything.
100%, brother.
No, I'm actually not. The reason I'm not is because of, well, first of all, I want to address one other thing that you said. To me, this map is, yes, we want you all right here. We don't want you here, and we certainly don't want you up here.
Right.
Right. So that's it. And that doesn't.
Which is what people
that doesn't. I mean, that doesn't define the character of what the county is today. To me, it doesn't define the character of what the county is to be in 50 years. There are developments. Riverstead is one of them. Sold out very quickly. They did very high-end homes at very nice subdivisions with an HOA, and did very well. So you can't just say one thing to the extreme of the other. No one's going to do this. No one's going to build subdivisions. Well, they did. They did it, and they sold out. I like the idea of being able to define within 5 different areas. The reason I like the idea to define.
You can do 6 if you use the ODAs.
Sure. The reason I like to define within 5 different areas is so that we can say 20%, 30%, whatever. And that's the part that you're leaving out about the sprawl. They're not just going to go do a $600,000 house on an acre of land or whatever subdivision, because we're talking about multiple factors within each of these zones. This gives us this one where, to me, if I'm looking at for the county, it gives me this one, or this one way up here. For me, in my zone, this one or this one. Either one or no. Dense or no dense is basically what we're trying to say to everybody within the district and with everybody within the majority of the county. Either dense or no dense. And I'm saying, you know what, maybe we should say dense, not as much dense, a little less dense, not dense at all, nothing. I like the idea of having 5 different choices and us having the political willpower to go through and have the conversations and go, you know what, you're right, this one should be 40%, and this one should be an acre, or this one should, whatever that is. And then the setbacks is a part of each one of those zones. The map, to me, let's take the map away and just say, I want 5 choices. They looked at things through a couple of different lenses, and they took out the lens of the public input. The public input is important, and a lot of people are saying things that, well, I just want this the way it is now. I want it to stay the way it is. And they're not, to your point, they're not thinking 50 years into the future. But that was why I made the reference to Greenville to Easley becoming completely developed then, because that was the thinking of what was going to happen, and yet it never did. There are a lot of areas on here that don't have infrastructure at all. At all. Why would we tell them, oh, go ahead and start planning now, let that be dense. Why not say, right now, it's this, until the infrastructure gets built, and then maybe we can make a vote to change that color to a different color.
Just one question for you, Lloyd. So last week, we made a step forward. You're proposing we take 2 steps back. In the interim, you could have done one of 2 things. I'm just going to ask you if you did either one of these. In the interim, you could have went through here, like we talked about with the ODAs, which means that the 3 of you guys could create regions where you very specifically stipulated based on the input from the people in your areas what you wanted to have happen before there was, a change in the type of development areas. That's what we talked about. One of the other things I asked for I didn't get last time was kind of what he'd been asking for, which is for the top half of the county to be 2 acres. I'd like to have 2 acres across that. That's the above 183 being different, right? That didn't make much traction last time, but here's the reason I'm asking, right? I don't think that you went and sort of carved out what you'd like to have. And then 2, with this, you're saying they could do this and they could do that. In what magic time is that going to happen? Did you bring us a little graph that said, I'd like to have this, this, and that to go along with what you're talking about?
No,
Or are we just going to wait till we meet again? Because if you did, let's see it. Let's talk about it. Let's vote on it now so we can move on to the rest of the book. There's 400 other pages.
Carl, can I make a point?
Let's share with Doug.
I think what he's trying to say is
Hold on a second.
he looks at all this density.
Hold on a second.
No, I asked the question. Do you have anything like that?
Actually, that's when I started, when I said I began to do that process.
Okay.
And I looked at this and thought, well, crap, that is kind of what I want to do here, and based on what they're saying, this is kind of what I want to do here. Well, it's already been done. We just kind of overlooked it. We overtalked our way into getting this. And keep in mind, we didn't say all of a sudden, hey, let's go to 3. We all come back with 3 and tell us that's good. They brought that and said, we're going to simplify and make it easier because we want to get this through, and that's where the density is going to wind up being, and this is the haves and the have-nots. That's my only point.
There's been 2 meetings since we all here voted for this and then took it to second reading and approved it. And there's been 2 meetings since then where we could have, we took this last time because for whatever reason, we all thought, okay, we'll do this and we'll add in this other area that's customized for each one of them. So the only reason I'm saying this is at some point, right, the clock is ticking. We got to kind of like, whatever it is the people have told you has to be kind of consistent meeting to meeting. So can we get to that?
I think the point that he's trying to make is, and I see what you're saying, is rather than just saying this is our vision, this is all going to be dense here, and we're going to just ignore the ruralness of that area now, right? We're going to recognize the ruralness of that area, and we're going to protect it. That's what you're trying to do, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's logical to me.
I don't have a problem. That's why I voted for it the first time. When we sent it out at the second reading, that's the map that we sent out, right? Yeah, I thought that was a great idea. And then we've had a lot of dialogue since then, and the staff came in and said, hey guys, remember what we talked about along 123? All the stuff that we kind of concurred with along the way. I'm just saying, if we're going to change it tonight, for the love of God, let's change it, for the last time and then move on.
So Dr. Wilson, I do want to say, because I've sat here and I've actually enjoyed listening to the discussion, and I think Councilman Seta did a great job of summarizing my thoughts as well. And we did beat the dead horse extremely bad last week on this topic. I do feel like the 5 zone map does a lot of what we talked about. But you said something at the last meeting that I'd never thought about prior to. And I had a conversation with somebody on the audience when I got here tonight. And this has got to be a living document. It can't be a bookshelf in. And you talked about last time it regularly being looked at as things change and as areas change and all the things change, right? You talked about that, and that's where the planning commission and us and all working together and all the things. And if you start with the map that has all the density that none of us truly like, because we went from 3 to 4 pretty dang quick last week, because of that, this map is a better starting point to allow for that annual review or that living, breathing document. That is the take that I'm getting from all of this conversation, but I hear you loud and clear. You were for it the first time. You were for this one because your people were getting what you felt like they needed. And truthfully, that corridor is the 3 of us, with Councilman Limble with 12 people at the end, I think he said. But the truth of it is, I respect that and understand that, but I do think it's important that the staff did a wonderful job the first time, and I'll admit that I missed the wonderful job until recent, if that makes any sense. And that's the reason I think the 5 zones make a lot more sense than just 3. Because in 20 years, and that's the planning part of this, in 20 years, this map may look like that. But if I looked at that map today, I would think everything in that dark blue would be able to handle everything that's allowed. And that's just not the case, nor is it feasible. 20 years from now, it very well may be, but it's not today. And I feel like the 5 zone map does a better job of exhibiting that, if you will. Now, I know Councilwoman Linville, she wants a little higher density allowed in her area. There's parts of my area that can handle higher density. There's also parts of my area that are dark, light blue, whatever, that I know can't handle. And I argued that last week to nauseam. So I think that that's where there's a little room. And I don't know that that has to be decided at this moment or time, because I do think that this is a great starting point for a living document. And that's what ultimately I feel like as a council, we all have to decide is this going to be put on the shelf 20 years, or is it truly going to be a living document?
So in reflection of that, we went from 3 areas last time to 6. 1 for Highway 8, 1 for the central area, and 1 for your area. So to me, we went to 6. The ODA thing was it was a separate motion, so I think that's still applicable. We can still do that in overdevelopment risk area, the odor aid. The reason for that to me is because of planning. If, when, right? Or you've probably done drawings before, is, right? You guys would get to put in some criteria for future folks to consider before they open it up to growth. And so they would have to they'd have to answer to the public to make that change. So they couldn't just, so the folks in the future would actually have to come in and say, because you're listening to the folks today, the folks' voice from today carries on in perpetuity. If you guys craft the zone around your cities, and I told you I would support you in doing that because it doesn't have as much reflection over here. So you craft 3 separate zones, you put specific stuff in there, and I'm with you. Okay, and the reason for that is in the future, when whatever combination of people are on this board wants to change it, influenced by developers, pressure from the schools, who knows, right? They've got to come back to the people and say, okay, yeah, 8 years ago, folks put this ODRA on there, and we're going to change it now because it meets these criteria. And if they don't meet the criteria and they still change it, then they're held accountable for going against what we thought was a long-term plan. That's the reason why I'm supporting moving to this, right, and approving this, because it gives you guys the ability to reflect in your, because we've talked about this. Each one of us meet with y'all and have an input on small changes since the very beginning. That gives you guys, honestly, dictatorial powers to set the policy for what will be the trigger for future development. So you can honestly ask for almost the world, right? Sewer to every house, whatever. And we can't say that's impossible because they're taking high-speed telecom to every house in the community, right? Or everybody's their customer. So for me, it was 6, and it was prescriptive, and it carries the voice of the people longer. I love this because I still get exactly 100% what I want in my area. You know what the problem with this is, though? I know for a fact that the guys these recent elections, come on, that whole thing, the fervent for that stuff is going to fade as soon as they run the practicalities, right? And lawyer fees. They're going to start going right down Silverdam Road and Leavenworth Road and annexing the hell out of the property. But what am I going to tell people? With this, at least I can tell them, well, that's kind of the area, and I can come in with these guys and move it around a little bit. You guys probably let me do that. So I'm just asking you guys to plan. This is great. I liked it. I voted for it before, so I'm not taking anything away from it. I would rather you guys take the power of the pen, because you have it right now. You have the momentum of it right now, and reflect it. That's the will of your people. The door's open. So I'll take it. This is fine. But I think honestly, when you reflect back on this, particularly in the future, you'll wish you took this opportunity right now.
Other discussion?
Yeah, I'm fine with one point. I actually like this map. What I didn't like about that map was I talked about it just reeked of much higher density for that whole area. That's the reason I didn't vote for it. But actually, this map I like. What I don't like is these 3 areas here, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to make a substitute motion to make them the Appalachian Heritage Area. So it's an amendment, actually. these three areas, 1, 2, 3. So there'll be the Appalachian Heritage Area.
Again, you gotta show us in the big map
The
again.
3 fingers.
Yeah, the 3 fingers.
You can't see the definition on that, but you can.
Yeah,
on
the
that.
definition on this TV screen, I apologize, is not very great, but he's talking about, whoa, that's not great.
Well, I'm glad you don't touch it.
This, and this is what you're talking about.
To be clear, we have not defined what any of these colors mean though.
It's really just, yeah.
Yeah, those 3 fingers that are coming up. It just doesn't, it's kind of hard to explain to people. It just, to me, I always go back to simplicity too. I want to be able to explain to the public. You know, a lot of this, you know, was an arbitrary decision, but it was based on this. There's a lot of smoothing that occurred in this map, and I just think it would just look better that way. So that's my amendment.
So I have a substitute.
That's not a substitution
Okay.
amendment. Just a regular amendment.
So I have a motion to amend.
Yes.
Do I have a second on the amendment?
Can we state that motion clearly? I think it's the 3 fingers north of Pickens, changing from the natural heritage or the agricultural heritage area to the Appalachian heritage area.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question before we move forward.
Can I get a second on the motion?
Well, I'm not even talking about that. Question on the.
Point of order?
It
Point of
actually,
order. Go ahead.
Your point of order in the sense of, if we can just vote on, we're doing these colors, and then we can vote on what each person wants to do with changing the map. I'm all for that. I'm actually, would be in support of him. He knows this area better than I do. But I don't know, that we've got to just define the, if we're using these colors, this is the map that we're gonna start with, and then start moving stuff around. Is that, or? But
I
don't
understand
care.
what you're saying, but I have a motion to amend on the table.
Okay.
Do I have a second on the motion? I have a second by Councilman Wallace. The motion is to include, or to change the 3 fingers north of 183 in the Pickens area to the be included with the Appalachian Heritage Area. Discussion on that motion for the purposes of this map. Discussion on that.
My discussion is I find it hard to make decisions when we haven't defined what any of this. Does this mean we're gonna change it from 2 acres to 3 acres? Does this mean we're changing it? Like, without any definition, I don't know what that area is gonna look like differently. So I prefer that we define what these colors are before we start carving out what they mean. It's hard for me to just defer like, oh, you're right, there shouldn't be 2 acre lots there, when we don't even said this means 2 acre lots.
Other discussion.
And I'd like to ask the staff, what was do you recall the reasoning why that was set aside as a separate definition? Proximity to the town, transportation, you know?
The 3 fingers.
Mhm.
That's just how the data snipped out.
Okay, so the light blue,
Using the 9-point matrix we gave you?
That's right.
The 9-point matrix applied to census block groups, yeah.
so the light blue is 2 acres development. So what we're talking about doing is you're gonna have to have 2 acres of land to be able to build a house.
That's still really not defined as I understand it. This is just saying, and this is just my point of view, I'm not arguing one side or the other of this motion, Mr. Chairman, I'll make that clear. But what Mr. Seta's motion is treat those 3 fingers the same way you would treat the triangle between 8, 135, and 186. It's just saying, whatever it is, however you treat them, whatever the density, those should be the same, is what I understand he's saying. Is that helpful? You still gotta talk about what it is.
Yeah, there's no density matrix at this point.
Right.
Councilman Seda, just make sure I'm clear. You pretty much literally are just saying, just treat the whole area the same. Okay. Other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain because of the inconclusive information associated with the zonings and the colors and whatnot.
All right, so the original motion on the table is to adopt the 5-zone map as amended in the last vote. Further discussion on the 5-zone map.
That passed 4-1 to 1.
411.
Point of order.
Absolutely.
When we voted to send this out of the Cal to the second reading, there was, am I wrong? I mean, I might be wrong, right? I've had about 100 something temperature for the last day. Was there not a spreadsheet? Yeah, you're cooked, all you guys. That's why I didn't even breathe when I walked past those good people over there. They all voted. Half of them in my area. No, wait, I don't know that lady there, but all of them. There was a spreadsheet. There was a table.
There was a table, yes. There is a table somewhere.
There was not a lot of time for us to put thought behind that table.
I mean, we spent 2 hours last week arguing about 40 foot in front of a building that I now realize was the dumbest thing I've done in politics. But, you know, the little table that went with this thing would be implied to represent what these colors are until we all take action to individually, change that, right? Since we approved the entire thing and sent it to the second reading.
No, you never approved the table.
We sent a draft.
We've never.
We voted on the whole box to go to the second. I'm saying because this came out of the second reading, whatever this was, that's what the colors were. We can start from scratch and just write the whole thing again. But that was what was implied when we sent it to the second. It's not approved, but it was what you used as the definition. Yeah, you just said you liked it a second ago.
No, I'm just saying what was approved. I don't think that was approved, though.
It's part of the big document, right?
I don't think
No, we clearly approved
second.
the map with 0 definitions.
Yeah,
Really?
that was second reading.
Yeah, you didn't say it said, I believe that we had a map with no definitions of what it meant.
Mr. Roper, do you have a copy of that?
I do, it's got a lot of notes on the back.
Can you make a copy of that? next door?
Yes, absolutely.
It's not in color. Oh, somebody has a color one.
I respect that we're making edits and there's 2 pages of edits and whatnot, but this is going back to what we already looked at. The starting point for the discussion would be whatever they told us the colors represented last time.
That's correct. I don't disagree with that statement.
So we do have some language around a definition of each of the areas in the last thing that you guys gave us. It's got the definition of Appalachian heritage, agricultural heritage, natural, community, and gateway. And as we began our discussions last time, we focused primarily on the gateway corridor area. And that's where we were talking about half acre, and that's when we got into 40 foot, all that other stuff. But we were specifically talking about the gateway corridor area. That doesn't change here, except that in this case, you've got a gateway corridor and a community center area, which would give you more leeway in those denser areas to better define what those areas are going to be.
So I think with my understanding, if I'm understanding all the questioning, the explanation of stuff that you just went over with the matrix of how many acres per and all that is what's missing.
Yeah, but that was never voted.
Correct, that's the reason it's being discussed.
Nor was this. I mean, I think there was one thing voted on, which was 20 units for townhomes. That was the only thing that was voted on. The rest of it wasn't voted on. So this is just as much as implied as that table, which is none of it's implied.
Which is why the point of discussion of it, that's what I'm saying, is that you're right, it wasn't, but it has to be. Or it doesn't have to be, we leave it all up to staff, That's an option too, I don't like that option. I don't think that's a viable option.
Yeah, my recommendation is that once we decide, yeah, we're going with these colors, this is the basic idea, minus a couple of other things that the changes make, and I'm sure Councilman Lumley's gonna say, I wanna shade in these areas black down here. Is making sure that we have a definition for each of those 5 ones from Gateway, Community, Natural, Agricultural, and Appalachian as to what that means. It could be 20% open space, half acre, and it could be, 40%, 2 acres, whatever we wanted to do. One piece could be master plan. It's how we want to define it. We never got to the point of defining the zones because we never got to a concise thing on the map. And my apologies, I'm not trying to take us 2 steps back. I'm trying to give us more, a better way to define within those areas what we call those.
When we sent this out from the Cal to the thing, we had the grid, so we have a general understanding where to start from, right? The whole book, everything they did was a general area to start from, right? For this particular part of the process, to start. So this is where we start at. So if we're gonna, you can create anything you want to, but they already gave us some, so we can edit this, or we can ask you to add 74 more columns, or whatever, right? But I mean, if we're gonna start from somewhere, let's start from what we already looked at one time before.
I'm not disagreeing. This gives us a good, hey, do we like this for the Appalachian heritage? 50%, 2 acres, half acre disturbance area, 50-foot buffer, or do we want to change that?
But right now, we're just voting on the map. Right?
Correct. Now we're just saying, do we have 5? Are we going to use 5 rather than 3?
That's correct. That is the motion on the table, is the map. So any other discussion on the map?
For clarity purposes, it's 5 rather than 6, which is what we voted for last time.
No, last one we voted 3, or 3 and then add a 4th.
3 added, and then the ODA that was individual, whatever, the overdevelopment risk areas, which would be individually defined. So that would have, for my purposes, been 6, because you're likely to ask for something different than Chris would be asking for, or the other Chris, not the Chris.
That's correct. So I'll amend the motion just for good measure to adapt the 5 with the option of adding a 6, which is the overdeveloped risk.
That's already, we already approved that separately last time.
We did approve that separately, right?
So that, I mean, honestly, I think it should be in the book to begin with.
I see what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
This is getting so complicated.
It is.
So, since we started the overdevelopment risk area, you go back to this 5-zone map, is there a need to have the overdevelopment risk area?
Mr. Chairman.
Question.
So, yes, you would say, you know what, Highway 8, we're going to make that an overdevelopment risk area. Between here and here. Yeah, things like that. Because until they widen that, and it's a state road, so we can still say you can't do anything development-wise there until they fix that.
Thank you.
Other discussion on the map? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? What I think it's appropriate, we agreed we voted on a 5-zone map. It's only natural now to talk about what the 5 zones look like. Councilman said at the point, we had a great matrix, same point that Dr. Wilson made. We also have good definitions provided to us tonight in color. So I would.
Chris, would you mind, because this is something you were saying earlier, about the idea of making this sustainable? Because I think that may help us all promote eye on every hill. So I don't know how many of you guys know anything about this, or pass this down to them. So I have a motion to make, we're doing 20 years worth of work in 9 months, right? This kind of stuff, this dialogue should happen on an annual basis. So I have a motion to change the planning commission, the code ordinances associated with the planning commission, to require them on an annual basis to review, to have public hearings, to do a discovery associated with what's working and what's not working, and then on an annual basis make recommendations to the council with respect to improvements in the policy. Because when we went to the 1300 House meeting, the planning commission was stuck behind the counter up there saying, we don't make the rules. And people in the back of the room telling me I needed to get up and make sure everybody in the room understood that. This gives the planning commission a real voice. They can say, we asked them to change that rule. You're right, it's stupid. And they didn't change it. But it also makes this happen on an ongoing basis. So my motion is that we make a change with regards to the language that you see here for the planning commission to do this on an ongoing basis.
I'll second the motion. And then
Discussion.
So I think I like this because this gives the planning commission not authority, but it puts them directly into an advisory capacity for county council. They're going to know more of what's happening across the county than we. I mean, we have to have 20 town hall meetings and go back to Dr. Lee's place over and over. I've given you our time. But they would have more knowledge, I like this idea. I think this is a great idea.
I mean, they're dealing with it every day.
Right, every day.
I mean, and I was on the planning commission, and there's nothing less rewarding than having to tell folks, I can only vote, Ken used to attend all the meetings I was there, and it was a wild group when I was on that group. Some of the most hell-bent, like grassroots kind of guys we've ever had, I think, were on that group. You can only vote to the letter of the law, because the petition is to court. The petition doesn't come to us for a political decision. If you don't like your answer in the planning commission, you go to court, right? So the planning folks, and they have been sued. I think that they were sued over some public housing at some point back in like 2007 or 8. You have to follow the letter of the law. We write the letter of the law, but we don't get to it every 20 years. That's crazy. So for my purposes, because we're not going to make perfection, for sure there's some stupid in here, including the 40-foot setback when you have a half acre to play with. We need to give these guys an outlet to fix this over time so these folks can talk to Joe on the planning commission for his area. And then it comes to us to be publicly accountable for making the change or ignoring the recommendation. So this is truly sustainability.
That's true.
Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Hendricks.
Doesn't look good, does it?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, I was asking, is there any unintended consequence in the language in this?
Well, I just briefly read it. My concern is it, and I believe that it is, because I think it's maybe a question for the chairman to rule on, but is this germane to what's on the agenda tonight? We're dealing with UDSO, this is an ordinance for the planning commission, but I think it directly relates to UDSO, so I think it is appropriate, so if the chairman accepts it.
I would absolutely feel like it's germane to ensuring we have a living document, which is the UDSO.
Yeah, that's my only concern with it, and I don't see the consequences in it.
You can't foresee the unknown consequences, so you don't know about it?
Well, I just said, you know what I'm saying, that I don't speak attorney.
Any other discussion on this motion?
So,
Ms. Linville.
I just wanted to ask a question on B1, that they hold public hearings at least monthly to solicit public feedback on development issues. What currently, is there a once a month meeting where people go and say their development problems besides this one?
That's true.
Yes, so the current practice on the planning commission is they have specific public hearings on specific applications, but there's also a part of their agenda that doesn't get utilized much. This would beef that up, where it says, this is your opportunity to comment on things that aren't on the agenda, if you remember that.
Right.
And so this would actually give direction to that, and it fits with what we're already doing. It just lets the public know, like, this is your opportunity.
Okay, is monthly within the scope of how they're normally meeting? I mean, we have trouble getting people on commissions. We have a
For
lot
planning
going
commission,
on.
they're meeting monthly.
So would this be an additional meeting to theirs?
It's the public input section of the meeting.
It's the existing meeting, is the way we would look at that.
So it's adding a public hearing section to the existing meeting. This is not an additional meeting?
That's right.
There's already a public comment period.
I was gonna say, it wouldn't be a hearing as much as it would be.
This
public
uses,
comments,
okay,
right?
well, this uses the term hearing, which makes it sound
I think we would need it.
like you're actually ruling on something, which I find, to hold a public hearing every month sounds very formal to me. Sounds more what you were trying to say is
Forum.
allow for public forum
I think that's,
at all monthly.
either way would fit with current practice. I see what you're saying. We could adapt to either.
Okay,
I
and I would
think
like,
solicit public comment or public information would be more precise as to what you're saying, rather than hearing.
Okay.
I agree.
I would like to,
This is a draft.
all right, are we at the point where we're going through language?
Did he make a motion?
I made a motion to approve this. Let me amend my motion. My motion is to keep this be simplified, to change the planning commission ordinances so that they have this mandate. This was just architecture to give us the direction. And when I looked at it, the hearing piece of it, and I'll just give you an example. We did a whole flurry of cell phone towers when I was on here. And folks would come in and they would talk about their own individual cell phone tower project and how it was going to affect them. But at the beginning of the meeting, you know, 'cause you have a public hearing piece of it, input piece of it. If someone gets up and says, hey, you know, and by the way, anytime anybody talks about cell phone towers in public and they're against them, their cell phone always goes off in the middle of the conversation. That's just a rule of thumb to remember. So they're going to get up there and make a comment that, to my purposes, if you have an open forum for feedback on development standards, then that channels people directly to the system to be reviewed, to aggregate it, then reviewed, and then processed through a hearing of associated proposals to the county council. So when it comes to us, you know, pretty well digested by the community. So I think that's the reason why when I first read this, you know, which I think most likely Ken and someone did, but who knows. I like the hearing piece of it because people already can get up in front of the planning commission and make, you know, commentary on what's on the docket for the evening. This just makes the feedback on the docket all the time, so they can say, well, you know, you have some strong feelings about this one, why don't you take it to the planning commission? The planning commission specifically has to put it on the agenda and listen to you. Is it fair? The assessment of what you're looking at?
I agree.
So, what,
Did you change your motion?
So I'm going to simplify. This is the starting point, right? I'd like to make the change. So if we're going to vote on it, I'd like to make the change. This is the impetus, not the language.
You second that? Okay. Councilman Seda, thank you for waiting patiently.
the only thing I would, really what you're adding here is just that you have to prepare and recommend changes to programs and plans to the council. And I don't think they need to be told that they need to solicit. You go to those meetings, they have public input people, tell them what to do. You get phone calls, you get emails, there's things on Facebook, they're getting feedback all the time. I don't necessarily have to tell them to get feedback, they're getting it all the time. I think what really has the most merit here, I think, is that you're saying, okay, it's required that you give us something annually with these recommendations. It could just be that simple, it could be 1 or 2 lines.
And they're not active participants at that point, right? They're empowered participants. They can change their rules.
I mean, they can still give us a recommendation now. Nobody stopped them from doing that, but this is actually compels them to do it.
Agree.
So I would, the first line, I mean, you can keep it in there, nobody's gonna look at it, but they get feedback in so many different ways.
So when my amendment should be legal approval or legal review.
Why don't you just have the staff just look at it?
Yeah, I'd be glad to have it ready for Monday night, just a rewrite of it, with a little, without changing the substance of it, obviously.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand. It's unanimous. Any other, before I steer us towards talking about what the colors mean? So you all have a copy of the matrix that Councilman Seda mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. We also all have the definitions laid out, and that was in the packet that you received for tonight.
Mr. Chair, motion for a 5-minute break.
Okay. Second. All in favor? We'll be back in 5 minutes. Those of you online, we'll be back in 5 minutes. Please don't leave. Chris is still here.